My name's Ethan Minsker. I'm from a group called the Antagonist Art Movement. We're based out of New York City, but we have members and subsects of our group that are spread throughout the world, South America, Europe, but mostly centered out of New York City. Our fanzine, Psycho Moto Zine, is actually connected to the art movement in the way that it's now acts as like a gallery for us. So we try to team up writers and artists and use that as a calling card for each artist. So the zines we distribute through the record stores, we put them out in galleries, spaces like this, like Printed Matter, a high-end zine art book shop in New York City. A lot of people, when they think of fanzines, they think of punk rock type of very low quality Xerox. If you walked into Printed Matter and picked up a variety of stuff and looked at it, you would see the price range goes from $10 to $500. We put our fanzine there for free. They don't really sell ours there for like $600 or anything. But they also do the LA and New York book fair, and they also provide grants for art books and stuff like that. This is our fan page, so please, anyone, please join our fan page for our film. This is the way we get people to know about it and build up an audience. For me personally, I'm going to talk about how I started doing fanzines. I'm dyslexic, severe learning disability. I grew up being told I was never going to be a writer. I got into the punk rock scene and started going to the record stores and seeing self-published fanzines. Looking at that, I realized, I could probably do this myself. Working together with the artists and the writers is the birthplace of our art movement. Doing the fanzine has then led to a lot more opportunities. Like, we're actually here because Andrea saw one of the zines and had a DVD in it, and then got a better understanding of not just the fanzine, but our art group in general. What I realized after doing the fanzine since 1988 till now, I would think that most of you as artists, you're going to go through the art world and community realizing that every time you try to do something, there is somebody in between you and getting to success. There is going to be art directors, there's going to be curators, there's going to be a variety of people who say like either yes, you're welcome in, or you're not. The fanzine sidesteps all of that. You create your work, you can put it into a folder. It's actually just like your portfolio. And then you can leave that anywhere in the world. The good thing about doing a fanzine opposed to doing a blog, and a blog is good too, and we have that in addition to what we do, accessing people you would never have contact with a lot of times happens through our fanzine. We leave it on the seat of a train, we leave them in banks, we leave them in coffee shops, we have people handing them. We're asking her to take some to Japan for us. For somebody to look up a blog, they have to actively go down and sit and actually type it in. And unless they're really motivated to do that, we find that happens very rarely. With a fanzine, is something like, oh, here's my friend's fanzine, here. I've read it, I pass it on to you. You have a secondary and third audience. As an artist, it's a really good tool. We try to push a lot of our guys in our group to not just do like the street art or the gallery work. We try to have them have secondary things. So some of them do fanzines that acts like as a calling card. Doing the fanzines started our group, the Antagonist Movement. That led to doing books. If you send a fanzine to one prisoner, it'll circulate through that prison for years. So I did that, had my home address, and then I was getting letters from prisoners, not just from the United States, but all over Europe. Letters from John Wayne Gacy. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with him. Serial killer. I think he killed about 30 people outside of Chicago. So my roommates asked me to take our home address off the zine, and so we did. So there's a lot of things you learn through the process of error. The zine community is something that's spread worldwide, and once you kind of tap into that, you can access a whole variety of different places. You can actually find, locations and shows through that. So like currently right now, we work with the Sticky Institute, which is out of Melbourne, Australia, run by this guy Luke, who does U-Zine. And then he actually sent us to a place in Chicago, Quimby's, which she has the book bag for, which now sells our books and fanzines. I think if you're thinking about actually doing something where it's publishing, you're going to realize that there's a whole sort of venue that actually sells fanzines you can sell your books through. So a lot of my books get into bookstores through connections through the fanzine. In New York City, we sell through St. Mark's Books and a few other stores. All of those places prepped and primed by us putting fanzines there before, building up relationships with the clerks there, and then saying, hey, we have a book too, and then them pushing the book because we'll push the location in our fanzine, we'll drive people to the store, we will send people to buy the books, and they'll buy other stuff there too. I'd say there's a whole thing on the side of economics of art and doing fanzines. The biggest thing and the biggest problem you'll find with doing these, the actual cost of printing. You can work through distributors that will sell your stuff. There are grants out there for fanzines. Some people have access for printing at home, so you can do that yourself. But that's going to probably be the biggest struggle you have, is figuring out how to produce it. And do you want to mass produce it? Every one of our zines, we generally put out about 6,000 copies. There's a lot of fanzines where they only put out like 10 copies. There's fanzines where they're handcrafted in such a level that you could only put out 10 or 15 copies. Hand-stitched with like fur covers. We actually did a whole variety of fanzines where it had fun fur on the cover. I'd worked on a music video shoot. I didn't steal. They gave me 2 bags of fun fur from Typo Negative, a heavy metal band in the 90s. And then I went home and I cut it up and I used it all on fanzines and probably put out maybe 1,000 with a fun fur cover. It's time consuming. You have to imagine is that anything you put out, especially in New York City, you're competing with high-end, quality, glossy covers that are already free. If you can make yours just a little bit different and catchy, they're going to pick yours up before they will that. So Eric runs our layout stuff for the fanzine. The way our stuff works is that in the Antagonist Movement, each individual artist can dictate their project, but every artist who helps has to have a lot more freedom of control. So I send stuff to Eric to work on, and then he does the layout pretty much unmolested by me. Pretty much. I will say like minor things, but you find that in creating something and asking a large group of people, how do you get them motivated to work on what you do? And the trick we find with all our projects, whether it's the books or the films or gallery stuff, is to let each individual artist express what they do creatively through your venue, whether that's a fanzine or not.
It was just a great group to hang out with in the beginning, and that's all it was. And then I got to know people, then I started helping to run things. The biggest thing I love about the group, which is the hardest thing for a creative person, that it's so natural just to do your own thing and be involved in your own world and doodle in your sketchbook. But if you work as a group and you get creative people together, it's wonderful to just have people that kick you in the butt, motivate you, shoot ideas back and forth. And you get involved with things like this. You can do bigger projects. You can get your names out there. I do the art editing. I look at the artwork ahead of time, work in the layout. The program I use is Illustrator, which I would never recommend for editing or doing layout. If this was for a job, I would always use InDesign. For this, I want it to be more challenging and almost like, like he was saying, you cut things apart, you put them together. Because I like to look at all the pieces just all over the page, or else it's going to look like my work and look like a magazine and neat and organized. Fun thing about this and actually being the one in charge of doing your own layout work is I like to play around with different fonts, different layouts. Sometimes I go to DaFont is fantastic for looking at fonts, and it's all organized by style. Almost everything is free to download. Just dafont.com. For this one, I actually had the idea to take colors from the cover and use that throughout the issue. Each one has more of a distinct look to it. Instead of the ones beforehand were mostly gray tones, black. As the zines get bigger and bigger each issue, I keep adding a page, which is the worst way, and I do not recommend doing it this way. When I first started doing this, that you have to think about, you have a page on each side, and it's double-sided. So you can't have an odd amount of pages, or you're going to have blank pages, so you have to actually think about, 4 pages total, and it's double-sided. Now we actually use the Facebook page for submissions. Facebook.com, pages, Psycho Moto Zine. If you go right there, you shoot us a message. You can even send us a little JPEG of the type of art you do. So yes, please submit sample writings. If you have a website, some thumbnails, if you want to get involved, that would be great. Try new things.